Good morning, Dunedin. It's going to be 17 degrees in your city today. Mostly cloudy, some occasional rain this afternoon and northeasterly winds.
Now, there's deepening concern about new proposed laws to counter the threat of terror in New Zealand. The government has released the final draft of the bill, which will be tabled later today in a few hours. But our next guest says new rules on surveillance may actually counteract what they're designed to achieve. For more, we are joined by University of Otago Political Studies Professor Robert Patman. Good morning to you, Robert. Thanks for joining us today. Tell us about, I guess, your initial concerns or thoughts about the proposed changes here.
Well, it's a package of proposals, Ali. Amongst these proposals is a proposal by the Ministry of Internal Affairs to have the ability to cancel people's passports up to 3 years and also to carry out warrantless surveillance for up to 48 hours. And now, of course, Mr. Key is justifying this, and I'm sure he's doing this with the very best intentions because of the rise of ISIS in the Middle East, which he says is a game changer. And he says these new measures are necessary to curb New Zealanders who may want to fight in the region on the behalf of ISIS. The counter-argument is that the government in the last 2 or 3 years, on 2 occasions, the GCSB and now SIS, have actually exceeded their brief and what they should be doing. And we have the situation where the head of SIS, Rebecca Kitteridge, has to apologise to Mr. Goff today on behalf of her intelligence service, the Security Intelligence Service. And so I suppose the counter-argument is this an overreaction by the government? How bad is the threat? And in a democracy, it's always incumbent on the government to show why they're having to curb people's right to privacy and indeed their human rights in general.
And of course, the Prime Minister was in fact on our programme yesterday, and what he said to some of the criticisms was, in fact, well, they're just extending the period of cancellation for a passport. They can already do it for 12 months. Now it will be 3 years. And in terms of the additional powers for SIS, well, they say the police can already do those things. They're just extending it to the SIS.
Yes, but I mean, the justification of it seems a little bit vague. Mr. Key says that at the moment there's 30 or 40 people in their watch list. But are these people actually fighting in the Middle East? Are they people who may go and fight in the Middle East? Are they going to fight for ISIS? Are they going to fight for the Free Syrian Army, for example, the group that we support opposing Assad? So it's a little bit vague. And I think, you know, to quote Edmund Burke, that the greater the power of the government, the greater the possibility of abuse. And I think many people are worried that once you give governments in a democracy those sort of powers to intrude on the lives of law-abiding citizens, that you may actually be losing focus, Ali, on the people that you want to actually to surveil and monitor. And I think that's the big fear, that it could be strategically counterproductive.
So in fact, I guess, lessening the powers that they have because they do lose that focus.
Yeah, and I think the other thing here is we mustn't lose sight of the fact that ISIS is a political, not a military threat to New Zealand. It's a terrorist organisation. It's occupied a fair amount of territory in the Middle East. But essentially, we're engaged in a battle of ideas. And what we mustn't do is, if you like, dumb down the vibrancy of our democracy in order to cope with this problem. In other words, we don't want to create an Orwellian garrison state in order to deal with a threat which is distant from New Zealand and in the process end up doing the very things that the terrorists want us to do. Because after all, these people are dedicated to destroying our way of life. We mustn't do that for them.
And become just essentially the same thing. One of the changes that has drawn the most amount of criticism is the 48 hours of surveillance without a warrant. Do you think, I mean, there are several questions that this raises. What would be the need for that? And surely if there was enough means to justify it, you'd be able to obtain a warrant quickly regardless. And would that sort of evidence be admissible in a court anyway?
Well, they're good questions, and the government needs to provide a clear justification for that. I think the view being articulated by the government is that there are people who are dedicated, who have radical ideology, who may act quickly, and they cannot wait for a warrant. They cannot wait for the wheels of the judicial, the legal system to operate. However, you have to worry about the costs of that sort of arbitrary, or not arbitrary, but that ability for intelligence agencies to act in this way. And I suppose in a democracy, you've got to strike a delicate balance between being vigilant to terrorism, but at the same time not intruding unnecessarily on the lives of the citizens of New Zealand.
All right, there will be more on this to come. Thank you so much, Professor Robert Patman.
Thank you.